Hey everyone, Joe Waxman here. Excuse me. In this video, I want to talk about the nature of fear. This is not an astrology video. It's more of a philosophical, spiritual type video. So just to let you know beforehand what I'm talking about. And so my background, I just want to qualify this just to give you some foreknowledge about my understanding of these things. I mean, so first of all, I was always interested in spirituality and philosophy and things like that. And around age 27, actually as a teen, like I would read, books like spiritual books, the Tao Te Ching, philosophy, and all sorts of stuff like that, other spirituality, Zen, Buddhism, Hinduism. In any case, around 27, I met my spiritual teacher, Vanessa Stone, and she taught me a lot, and I studied with her for a while. And then later, around 2012, I mean, I had various different experiences, but around 2012, I had a really, really intense experience where I kind of I downloaded a lot of information, let's put it that way. I took, it was through a whole week where I was just like, I don't know, I was leaving my body, I was going into outer space, and I was meditating intensely for like, and fasting, and I was just downloading tons of information. It was a huge awakening. It was a huge awakening for me. I was literally awake for several days, really experiencing the awakened consciousness. And in any case, it taught me a lot about the nature of reality, the nature of consciousness, and the nature of fear. And basically, fear is a unresolved consciousness. And it's all one continuum. We like to think that there's all this, reality is all parsed out and that everything's separate and hardened and like compartmentalized. And it's not like that in actuality, when you really understand it, that consciousness is one. And I mean that in the largest sense, that the biggest view is that we are consciousness. That's not an intellectual view, it's a realization. When somebody's like fully enlightened, they're fully realized in their consciousness. There's no more separation, right? The rest of us have to deal with ego, right? And ego is it's rooted in fear, right? Fear, why is it rooted in fear? Because the nature of fear is that it's unaware. It's unawareness, fear. Like imagine if you go and you steal something that doesn't belong to you, right? You take somebody's money and they haven't found out, you're not caught. So you're a thief and you're getting away with it. Well, not only is there a lot of fear attached to that, but it's unresolved. And so what happens then? Well, you hide, you lie, you worry, you can't sleep at night. You're like, oh my God, I can find out. All that is like this fear energy. And then the resolution is that you're caught, or you confess, right? Or your karma comes to you and the money gets taken away and you get robbed and somehow, some way. And the money finds its way eventually through karmic laws back where it belongs originally. That's resolution, right? And then when you have that resolution and you go through whatever karma you created for yourself, then that consciousness can come to realization, can come to its own fruition, its own full consciousness. So fear nature is that in-between stage where the thief is not caught, right? That's we can see that in reality, but is almost also as like a parable, an analogy, right? Fear is the unresolved consciousness. And in that unresolved consciousness, it is unaware. You can look at, say, like 3 different phases of consciousness. Unconscious, which complete asleep. When we go around and say they're asleep, I'm awake, they're asleep. Like everyone says that, because people are awake to different things, awake to different levels, right? The ultimate awakeness is Christ consciousness or Buddha consciousness, right? It's the highest awakening, realization, enlightenment, satori, nirvana, right? But people, say, oh, I'm awake, and then what they mean is that they're like socially or politically awake, and we have like awoke, and that's a whole different story. But same idea. They think they're awake to something because previously they were asleep, and they realize, oh, now I'm awake, right? But there's many layers of awakeness, and right. So in case we have this thing asleep, like dead asleep, and that's just numb. There's no feeling there when asleep is. So it's complete ignorance. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know that you don't know. That's asleep, right? Then you have subconscious, right? These are all variations of consciousness, right? And subconscious is partial awakeness. And in the partial awakeness, you have a lot of pain, you have a lot of fear, you have a lot of negative emotions, and you have all sorts of imagination. Why? Because when consciousness is not fully conscious, it doesn't know itself, right? What's it going to be conscious of? Well, if everything is consciousness, then the only thing it can't be conscious of is itself. So it doesn't know itself. Therefore, what happens when consciousness doesn't know itself? Well, it's subconscious. It creates imagination. It says, I don't know who I am. It's not saying this. I'm just explaining how it's the process that happens. It's like, I don't know who I am. Therefore, I'm going to make myself up. That's the nature of ego, right? Ego is a creation of the subconsciousness because it's an invention. It's a mask. It's, oh, I'm, whatever it can get away with, right? Like we have like presidents and singers and artists and workers and wherever, that's the identity, right? And then the ego says, okay, I guess I'm a mailman, because I'm obviously, and I'm a Christian, and I'm a Christian mailman, and I'm a, my skin color, my religion, my background, they put all this together, and that's the ego, right? And then their personality influences it and all this thing, right? That's what I must be. I must be that's not the reality. That's the ego. That's the ego creation. That's the Maya. That's the fantasy, right? But do you understand what I'm getting at? Is that when consciousness is not fully conscious, it's subconscious, and there's a whole array of parts of them might have some developed consciousness. So like the developed consciousness has a certain amount of joy and happiness and ease and love, right? And then they go around, oh, I love I love sunny days, and I love my family, right? And I love this music, and I love this food, right? I'm generally happy or whatever, but I'm also really miserable, right? And so that's subconscious. It's a whole mix of stuff. And the invention of the ego, whatever it is, like President of the United States. Oh, I'm a big man. I'm President of the United States, and I've got a big personality, and I got a lot of power and sway, and that's all still creation, ego, whatever it is, But the point is that it's a mask. It's an invention based on our karma, our destiny, all those circumstances. We put it together and we create a mask. It's an invention. That's the ego. That's the nature of the ego. Underneath, it's fear-based. And that fear can also, in the same way that it creates the ego, it can transmute itself into all sorts of negative emotions. It doesn't like to stay as fear. Fear never wants to stay as fear, right? You go around, you don't see anyone like quaking in their boots, even though we're all holding on. If we have an ego, we all holding on to a lot of fear. That's the crazy part about this, is that everyone's afraid, right? Pretty much, unless you're fully awake, which in Zen they call it leaping beyond all fear. It's Satori, full awakeness, means leaping beyond all fear. That means pre-awakening, pre-Satori, pre-Buddha consciousness, pre-Christ consciousness, it's all loaded with a certain amount of fear. Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, Satori, Nirvana, complete enlightenment, there's no more fear. So all of us normal people who have an ego and to go around the world thinking, I'm so-and-so, blah, 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 with our identities and all that, we're operating on fear. Yeah, there's a whole mix. It's a variation, a whole gradient of shades of gray and whatnot. But fear will mutate. It's the it's the mutable part of ourselves. It's always it's the shapeshifter. Fear is a shapeshifter. So what it also does, fear becomes anger, fear becomes sadness, fear becomes greed, jealousy, hatred, resentment, what else? Gluttony, sloth, all this, the 7 deadly sins, right? That's all fear. What else? Shame and guilt and regret, lust, right? These are all variations of fear. These are all fear-based. And the reason why fear will not stay as fear, because when fear is in its raw fear state, what happens? What are people like when they're afraid, when they're consciously, it's the most uncomfortable feeling, because fear in that state is burning itself up. It's becoming more conscious. I don't know if you've ever had an extended period of fear before, where you're just raw fear, where you're just staying in raw fear. I had a huge expulsion of fear during that 2012 phase. I was just like swimming in fear. And luckily I had some good teachings about that helped me navigate through that. And just as while I'm here, the side note tangent, the way to manage fear is to be completely neutral. When you're experiencing fear, don't attach onto it, don't reject it, right? Neither resist nor attach. Be neutral. Whenever fear comes up in your mind, be neutral. Just let it pass. It'll flow right through you. That's the lesson. That's the teaching about fear. It's just going to flow right through you. If you resist it or you attach onto it, you're going to create something out of your mind to then manifest that fear. You will manifest the fear. You'll manifest it, right? And that's really dangerous. Fear won't hurt you. Fear is completely harmless unless you believe it's going to. Fear is completely harmless unless you believe it can harm you. Then you'll create something in your mind, right? If you're being chased by the boogeyman, just realize it's just imaginary, right? It's not. It's not. I mean, the boogeyman doesn't. People exist, you know. People might hurt you, but the boogeyman, no, right? I mean, I've had that. I've had periods of fear fantasy where I was just like indulging in some fear and I was literally creating it. Then I just got so tired. It's because it's just exhausting, you know, indulging in fear. I just got so bored. I was just like, okay, just come get me right here. Do whatever you're gonna do to me, dude. I'm done. I'm done running from my fear. And then I had a big laugh because I was like, oh, I just created that whole thing, right? So yeah. So fear is the subconscious pain, and fear is always painful because it's not fully awake, it's groggy, it's confused, it's delusional, it's imagining itself because it doesn't know itself, but it doesn't know that it doesn't know itself. It's like, oh, I really am a mailman, you know, that's really what I am, and I really am my skin color, and I really am my religion, and I really am my name, and I really am my family, I really am my. And that's why, you know, like people get so excited about football teams, and you know, like who cares? Like it's just completely. I mean, fine if you. I mean, you know, I'm not knocking hobbies. People like what they like, but I mean, it's just like it doesn't mean anything. It's just completely fantasy. But people really get off on it. You know, like their home team wins. Like, okay, whatever. Who cares? They're all the same, basically. I mean, any case. I mean, that's the whole deal with identity. That's the whole deal with multiple, all these negative emotions. They're all fear-based. It's all fear. And fear is all just consciousness. When fear resolves itself, it becomes fully conscious. And so when we wake up, all our sleeping energy, it becomes subconscious. Therefore, it becomes painful. And we can mask that pain with different identities. You know, the pain morphs into something else. Maybe it's anger, maybe it's hatred, and that's masked by a, you know, like a friendly mask, you know, like that makes a lot of money to compensate for all the hatred that they have in their heart, you know, some stuff like that, right? People seek materialism and women and drugs and alcohol and food and money and power and, all of it, all the worldly stuff to mask the subconscious pain that they feel in their heart, in their whole body, in their soul, right? That's all fear. It's all fear. There's really not like, it's not compartmentalized like all these different things. We have this over here and that over here and that over here and that over. It's just one. It's really, really simple. That's what I'm getting at. Life is so incredibly simple when we boil it down. When we get down to the bottom of it, it's one consciousness divided up into sleep, subconscious, full conscious. Full consciousness is the flowering of consciousness. And in full consciousness, we have all the positive expressions of consciousness, which are love, peace, harmony, intelligence, right? We can become actually more intelligent. That's one of the great understandings of this knowledge, is that you can actually become more and more intelligent as you grow and evolve in this life if you're devoted to not creating more karma for yourself, but devoted to cleansing out your karma, living for the soul, right? Living a good, healthy, spiritual life where you resolve your karma and don't create new karmas for yourself. Then you become more and more intelligent all the time. That's real intelligence, real wisdom, real understanding, because part of fear is confusion, right? If you're full of subconscious fear, your mind is confused and clouded, and you believe all sorts of fantasies. Just like you fantasize about yourself, I'm a mailman, right? I'm not actually a mailman. I'm just saying, like, if I was a mailman, that would be my identity, right? Right. Whatever your skin color, whatever your nationality, whatever your ethnicity, whatever that is, whatever your whole circumstances are, that's comprises your identity, and you're like, this is who I am, right? It's not who you are. That's not, because we are not the body. We are consciousness. We are not the brain. We are not the mind. We are beyond all of that, those things. The mind is just thought. We are consciousness. We are pure consciousness, right? And when we evolve, the fear, the sleeping consciousness, the subconscious, the unconscious, the subconscious, the fear, the sleep, into full consciousness, then we become, Satori, enlightenment. That's why these spiritual teachers are so good at talking, because they're so clear-minded, right? Listen to them. They make sense. They really do. They're not coming from a glorified religious perspective, like, oh, my pastor said this and that, my rabbi said that and that, They're understanding there's the direct connection to the whole entire universe. We are the whole entire universe. How do you think it's like, you believe we cannot connect to our source, to God, to the whole universe? We can know it directly. We don't need any intermediary, right? That's the whole teaching. That's the really high teaching. It's like, there's nothing above you. Go inside. You are it. You are it. The teaching is here. If there's a Bible, this is it. That your whole experience that's the Holy Bible, right? Find out what's there. God is here, right? And that when you evolve the consciousness into full consciousness, it becomes clear, and you don't need anything else. You don't need a book. You don't need a church. You don't need a synagogue or monastery or a person to tell you the truth. You are the truth. You are the truth, and that's the truth. It's the simple truth. You are the truth, and there's nothing that can be more simple or true than that. And it's just that, right? So understand who you are, what you are, because therein lies the truth, right? And the more you evolve to openness, clarity, full consciousness, it just clears it. It's just the clouds dissipate, and it's just clarity. It's just gone. Like all the confusion is gone, and there's just joy and contentment and peace. And by the way, I'm not saying that I'm fully enlightened, right? Like I'm not. Like I know that I'm still in process. I still have, fear and all the negative emotions and subconscious, but I've seen enough to know my trajectory and to know where I'm going and to know what the truth is about all this. I'm not delusional in that sense, I'm still holding on to some things that I'm working through. So I completely, and I don't even care. Like, I don't even need to reach whatever final goal if there is one. I mean, there's stages, right? It doesn't matter to me because I'm just tired. Like, and I've seeked all that for a long time. And now I'm just like, well, it is what it is. It's going to be what it's going to be. And, my efforts don't really make much of a difference. Well, they do kind of, but they're not, any case, I do what I can, but I'm fine with it. But the reason that this is important right now is because of the state of the world. It's evoking a lot of fear in people, a lot of raw fear, because we're like, things are crazy. I don't know if you've noticed. I mean, who hasn't noticed that we're on the brink of World War III, nuclear catastrophe? Hopefully that doesn't happen, but it's certainly, being talked about, and a lot of these crazies and around the world and government are pushing for it. They're like, oh, we have to defeat Russia. No, you don't have to defeat Russia, you goddamn psychopaths. Like, seriously, like, stop trying to defeat Russia, because that means nuclear war. Russia is fighting for their survival. They will not give up, because that means that they will cease to exist as a sovereign nation. You will regime change them and install some puppet who's pro-American, like you've done with all the other. It's absolutely like, if you have a brain on your shoulder, it's completely obvious what they're doing, right? They want people to die. They want war. It'll cover up their crimes. I mean, we're in very dangerous territory. People are dropping dead left and right because of I can't even say why, I've heard it called the cupcake. So yeah, people ate a cupcake and they got sick from it. And so if you know what I'm talking about, you must know what I'm talking about, right? We are in this is a difficult time. I mean, no doubt. And then people are very afraid of things, and people are afraid of things that they don't understand. So, whenever something that's different comes across, I mean, I've been getting my feelings hurt. I know that's my responsibility, but this whole Jewish thing, because people are like, people go nuts, like they lose their mind when we talk about like different groups and stuff, and Jews are a very small number, so they think like Jews are just like one mind. The Jews run the media. No, the Jews don't run the media. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, anyway, I don't want to make this about Jewish stuff, but in any case, like, people are the more afraid people get, the more crazy they get, is my point. And it's important to understand this, and important to be aware of this with ourselves, and our friends, and just to put that into context, that people are going to become more afraid, and as they become more afraid, they're going to be acting more irrationally, more crazy. They're going to blame more. They're going to create stories more, because that's what fear does, right? It creates a fiction, and that's the whole nature of ego, and that's the whole nature of delusion and Maya, that fear is creating a fiction. So when people are afraid of things, they create a fiction about it. That's why people say all this stuff about, like, these minority groups, anytime like there's a minority group, or just any group that's different from them, anything that's different, fearful people will create stories, and usually negative stories, right, about that whole thing. And so, in any case, guys, I mean, that really is the bulk of what I want to say. I don't want to make this too long anyway, because then it's less likely that people will watch it if it's too long. But that's the nature of fear, and that's the nature of what's going on now these days, is that people are becoming very afraid, and so they're becoming very irrational and very hurtful and mean, and creating stories about all sorts of stuff that they don't know about. Yeah, so we all need to be mindful and be conscious, and do our best to put it all in context, and take responsibility for our own actions. And let's each one of us not try and foster the fear-based mindset, and remain in more fully conscious consciousness, frame of mind, perspective, come from full consciousness rather than fear, right? And so, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. And if you find yourself being afraid, just become neutral. Don't attach, don't resist, allow it to pass through you. Fear is literally, it's not a never-ending source. There's not a never-ending source. It's finite. That's the point. Because why is it finite? Because consciousness itself is infinite, but fear is the limited consciousness. Therefore, there's a certain amount of it, right? Within your own, within everyone's individuality, right? Within everyone's center, right? We are centers of consciousness, each one of us. That's why it appears like we're a me, right? We're just focal points for consciousness, and everything's a certain kind of focal point. There's more intense focal points and more loose focal points, right? Like flowers and plants, they're more dispersed focal point. They're a flower or a plant or a tree. A tree is pretty concentrated in a sense, but it's still more the energy is more dispersed. But they're not going to like talk to us with words, right? They're going to be very passive, right? But an animal is a little more focalized consciousness. Well, we are very focalized consciousness. We're not really a me, and that's the whole secret of it. We're not really individuals. That's the enlightened view will destroy you, and that's when once you actually understand that about full enlightenment, like if people are foolishly chasing enlightenment, they get to a point where they realize, oh, wait a minute, this means I'm literally not going to exist anymore as an individual. That's when you start to like turn around, you're like, oh, whoa, hold on here, like maybe ego is not so bad after all. Like, oh, what did I sign up for? I'm not sure. I don't know if I can go through with this. I don't know if I really want to destroy myself. You know what I mean? Like, I still kind of want to live. There's things I want to do as an individual. So it's interesting when you go down that path, the path of spirituality, and realize, like, really realize, somebody can tell you, oh, this will be the end of your world. And you're like, cool. When you really realize that, like, it's like, oh, whoa, let's take this slowly. Maybe all this Maya suffering stuff is not so bad because at least we get to be an individual in it, and you don't get to be an individual once you become fully enlightened, right? So it's this weird dichotomy, like, and you're like, oh, I want this pain to go away, but I want to keep my individuality, and it's like, but once you come to the other side, you're like, thank God I'm not me anymore. Like that part of you that is fully, that has crossed over into full consciousness, because it's freedom. And it's just joy, and it's peace, and it's contentment, right? Because there's no more war. Ego is a war, it's a struggle. Full consciousness, there's no war, there's no fighting. It's just consciousness. What's a consciousness going to fight it? It's like water in the ocean. There's no separation, right? So anyway, guys, fear is that hardened, right? Another analogy I've heard is like the salt doll. A salt doll, if it's on dry land, it feels very individual, contained within itself. But as it starts to walk into the ocean, it just dissolves into the ocean, right? So that's what we are. And the ocean is spirituality. The ocean is full consciousness. And we are, the individuality is that salt doll. And that fear is that salt doll, right? The ego. Fear creates the ego. The ego is the fruition of fear consciousness, which is subconscious, right? A sleep consciousness is not anything. It's like hasn't awakened yet, right? Fear consciousness becomes awakened in those moments of trauma or harsh difficulty, where like we're awakened, but like in a very unglorious way, like we're just like smacked in the face by life. That really wakes up sleeping consciousness. But then we're left with the subconscious fear, often called trauma, right? Held in the body, held in their nervous system throughout and it traps us there. Yeah. So that's more for another time. But anyway, I guess I just like talking. So Gemini, Sun, and Venus. Anyway, that's it for now. Not super long or drawn out. Just wanted to touch base on that nature of fear. And guys, don't forget to hit like. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. Leave some comments. You want to, I don't know, ask a question or leave an answer or whatever, experience, whatever, anything. That's fine. Totally welcome. And book a reading with me. My website is macroastrology.com. Or you can email me directly at macrogoalmachine@yahoo.com. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.